So welcome everyone. So I'll give you an introduction to this to the graduate programs. Before we do that, I would like to, and now it's not responding, go through our land acknowledgement. So Toronto is the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans and all newcomers, have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. The agenda for today is I'll give a short introduction to the Master of Architecture program, why you should study the Masters of Architecture at TMU, what a thesis is, a master's thesis, the admissions requirement and the admissions process, who to contact, and there's room for questions for you at the end. Also for our guests online, there'll be room for questions. I would like kindly ask you then to write them down in the chat, and then we can respond to them. Okay, thank you very much. So my name is Dr. Paul Flurka. I'm Associate Chair of Graduate Studies here in the Master of Architecture and PhD program in Architecture. Mimi Lam is our Graduate Program Administrator, sitting right here in front of me. And we have also Aina Arrow, who's not with us today, but is our Graduate Admissions Officer. So Mimi and Aina will be the people, when you are applying to our program, will be the two people you will be mostly in touch with. So Toronto, a little bit of the history of our program background. Toronto Metropolitan University, established in 1948, a degree granting institution in 1973, and a university status in 1993. So relatively, compared to European standards for sure, a relatively young university. A Bachelor of Architecture revised in 2007, and the Master of Architecture program established also in 2007, so also a relatively young master's program. CACB accreditation first was in 2010, and we just launched this year the PhD in Architecture program. So we are a full degree program. The undergraduate and the Bachelor of Architectural Science, focusing around building design, no matter from which option or concentration you are coming from, allows you access into the Master of Architecture program. So I'm talking about concentrations that you as students at TMU choose in the fourth year: concentration in architecture, building science, or project management. The Master of Architecture program is open to you, to all of you. Interesting. Nice slide. Why attend the Master of Architecture program at TMU? Critical thinking. So that is something we like to work with you is that to form and create your basis and foundation around critical thinking, something that we believe is already exercised in the undergraduate program to some extent, but we'd like to take you further. We have small class sizes. So a cohort in our master program is around 25 students, 25 to 30. 25 domestic students, a maximum maybe about 5 international students, coming not all from TMU, but from other programs in Canada and outside of Canada. Personal supervision, so there we have a very close kind of ratio in our studios, about at the moment, 2 people teaching in a studio for about 28 students. So that is a very kind of tight community, similar to what you're used to also in the undergraduate for your studios. Personal supervision also happens later on, I'll talk about that more, in the thesis project, where you are supervised and you have a very close connection with your supervisors. The unique thesis project, I will talk about more later on. And we also have a great workshop that many of you know who are studying here in the undergraduate program, manual and digital tools available for you to execute or work on whatever you think you are interested in working on, and helps you and motivates you for your work in the department. And also study trips. I'll talk about that more as well. And of course, it's based in Toronto. City of Toronto, located in downtown Toronto, one of very few, I'd say, downtown campuses that are familiar to me. Very large city, diverse, multicultural. Maybe, to be honest, a little setback is the expenses associated with Toronto, as you know, but it is for some maybe a struggle, but we have a lot of students who have actually overcome those struggles and found a way to coming into our program. Just some highlights maybe of downtown Toronto that are not necessarily everyone is familiar with, especially those online. And we also have some internationally interested people. The Alan Lambert Gallery, Brookfield Place from Santiago Calatrava, or the Michael Leach and Crystal, the ROM, the Royal Ontario Museum by B&H and Daniel Libeskind, or the AGO by Frank Gehry, the Art Gallery of Ontario. This is an interior view of the same gallery. It's being extended again now. It's the Sharp Center for Design, OCAD, from Young and Wright and Will Alsop. Here, the Student Learning Center at Toronto Metropolitan University, designed by the Norwegian architects Snohetta and built here in collaboration with Seidler Architects. This is an interior view. Each level has a dedicated kind of theme, the beach, or I think this is even the beach, where students have the opportunity to learn and study and book rooms. This is the one on Bloor West at Young, Foster and Partners and Core Architects. This supposed to be finished in 2025. Large high-rise residential building. King Street West project by Frank Gehry, which is under development. Proposal for King West development by Bjarke Engels Group. It's an exterior view of what it's supposed to look like when it's realized. So a lot going on in Toronto. Toronto is a busy city, still a lot being built, a lot working in collaboration with architects, not necessarily based in Canada, as you see. A lot of them are European architects that then collaborate with local architects. So the Master of Architecture program is designed to strengthen your ability to think critically, act collaboratively, and create impactful solutions. So that's what we work on with you. So this 2-year, 5-semester program will launch your professional architecture career and prepare you for success in the related fields. So students leaving our program always almost immediately find positions in architectural offices, not necessarily that they stay there for many years. A lot, move along, stay maybe 1 or 2 years with one firm, and then move on and collect experiences in another firm. A PhD in architecture, and maybe not necessarily interesting for you now, but maybe even in the future, for students wishing to make an original and significant contribution to disciplinary knowledge through design-driven research and creative scholarship. So this is something unique about this PhD program and why we were also granted to launch this program. It's research through design. So it's not just a theoretical kind of PhD that is based in a lot of literature and historical studies, but is a progressive kind of approach to what the future practice could look like. So something interesting for you maybe in the future. We have these 4 program themes that the graduate programs focus on. And they are themes that I will get back to that later on, is when you are asked to write maybe a letter or a proposal around what your interests are in coming to the Masters of Architecture program. What would you like to research on? It would be nice if you can somehow locate it into one of these themes. So it's sustainable design, as you hopefully are already well invested in, faced with unprecedented environmental, economic, social, and cultural challenges on a global scale. We talked a lot about this also in the Master's Studio. We had a recent publication, Pale Blue Dot, that was focusing on the cascade of crises through climate design, through climate change, and what design responses could look like. Emerging technologies, technological developments in design, such as artificial intelligence, digital fabrication, parametric design and mass customization. That will be and is a focus of the future practice of architecture. Design research and creative scholarship. So architectural design is not only a form of professional practice, but a mode of critical inquiry and knowledge production. So it's free to open up these processes. It will most likely, I wouldn't say necessarily scare you a bit, but you will feel that it's not, that you cannot automatically default to what you have been doing in your undergraduate studies. So it's not a continuation of that, of doing a little more of a refined project, but it is actually opening up the box again and looking at practice and design methodologies from a new perspective. And of course, global communities, increasingly united by digital communications, migration and trade networks, ecologically precarity and resource scarcity. So these are also topics that weave into the themes of the master studios that we invite you to work in. This is what you will, when you go onto our website, the website that will page at the moment that will open up for you. These are being currently updated, so I hope that they will be launched in maybe a week from now. I promised actually that should happen before this session, but the information is very similar. This, other than a new layout and maybe a better navigation system, but this is the degree and the requirements that go along with this degree. So how is this program built? So what are the parts? And as a part of this program, you're required to complete 2 studios, 5 courses, core courses, and two electives, which are outlined on these course pages, and I'll get to them in a section. And there are also something we call collaborative competitions, which is very open. It's like a collaborative design, something that you can investigate what you are intrinsically motivated in doing. It can be a competition where 2 or 3 of you get together and work on a competition and can fulfill this requirement. But there are many other opportunities to fulfill this requirement as well. Those are 2. The impact is around 75 hours each, and they have to be done or completed before you graduate or before you submit all your requirements for graduation. So actually best by the end of presenting your final milestone for thesis. And the thesis, we call it actually more precisely the thesis project, is you work closely with a faculty supervisor where you carry out independent research on an approved topic within the field of architecture. And it develops into a thesis document. And the thesis is designed, and let's say over the course of these 9 months, into 4 milestones that you have to meet. And they are relatively well paced. You get introduced to how that works. And with each milestone, you have to reach a certain kind of resolution of your thesis project. So it's not limited to the design of a building. It can be very open, and I'll show you examples later on. The supervisor is something everyone has a question of. How do I find a supervisor? You will get to know a lot of people in the Master of Architecture program. You know possibly people from studying at TMU already, maybe that you would like to work with as a supervisor, but it also depends on your topic. It's not just about who you like and who you'd like to work with, but it's based also on the expertise of the supervisor, that they can support you best in what you are pursuing as a thesis. And that is your main go-to person. There's also a second reader, but they are less involved in your thesis project, or should be. So the minimum length of time to complete all of these requirements is 20 months, so 5 terms. The maximum length is 36 months. So there is always can be hiccups on the way where you have to extend. There is also opportunities of taking an academic leave if it's necessary for a consideration and so on and so forth. But as I said, we're a very small program. and we work closely with you as students together. Should any disruptions happen on your career path, we are there to support you, to make sure that you can successfully get through our program. So just a short look into what kind of courses, and that you have an idea what's actually going on. In the first year, you're relatively set with your courses. You have a studio in critical practice that is 12 hours weekly, mostly team taught by 2 supervisors, so instructors. Um, and guiding you through through the studio. And this studio is really something very different, and I'll show you what that means in detail, so you have also a kind of picture of what it's about. There's a seminar in critical practice and a course in contemporary architectural theory. Now, even though they stand alone here as courses and have different course numbers, what we try to do as colleagues, we sit together and we work together, that works and moves together as a unit, so that they are interdependencies that we see, so the studio can really activate knowledge that is being prepared and used in these seminars, and bring them back into studio, or issues and subjects and topics coming out of the studio then can be further explored in the seminars. So that is what happens in the fall term. In the winter term, a similar setup, another studio in collaborative practice. So what this means is that we have someone as a faculty who is also as an instructor in that studio, and at best someone coming from outside as an external instructor, someone who is invested in practice and brings in also that kind of practice knowledge into the studio. Then we have a thesis in design research seminar. That is a seminar that prepares you, already exercises and prepares you for the thesis. So what does architectural research look like? What are the methods? How do you phrase a thesis? How do you phrase a thesis topic? So how do you state a question, or a research question, or a set of research questions around a topic? And then there's also the seminar in contemporary and future practice. It is very interesting that you might know Jennifer Esposito has taken on as one of our newly hired professors here at TMU, and brings in a lot of people from practice to discuss what future practice modes might look like, what they are looking like already. And it's a very good group of people that she brings in here. In the second year, so that's basically your first year, of course, spring, summer term, you already start working on your thesis. There's room for an elective. We have a very interesting, one of the very interesting electives that's called Drawing Data, and it's taught by Kate Korotoyeva, and already shows you how do you visualize maybe research questions, or how do you visualize data that you found and synthesizes it actually into something that you can read as an image. So also very interesting. And then in the second year, it focuses really on thesis for the 4 milestones I mentioned. There's room for another core course. It's called Current Topics in Architectural Practice, that switches every year. That's not set with one instructor. And there's room for another elective that you can choose from my elective catalog, or whatever offered in that term. So this is the program. So you see there's a lot of room here for thesis and to develop your thesis project. Travel. So study travel, and what the coming fall term studio will be focusing on is topics around the Biennale Arquitectura 2025. The theme has not been disclosed yet, so I can't tell you that. But it's a Venice show. It's in Venice. So during reading week, the studio will be traveling to Venice. It's not mandatory, but students always love to go, and it's also subsidized a little bit by the department to go to the Architecture Biennale in Venice. So that's coming. I don't know, has anyone ever been to Venice here? Italy, you've been there, so you don't count. So unless you wanted to do another PhD and so two have been there already. So, so, but it's not just to be there for the Biennale, it's also to be there for Venice itself as a living laboratory, explore the current themes and issues in architecture and see how that all comes together in Venice. So this year we were the topic of the studio is System City, and we traveled to Hamburg, Amsterdam, and Berlin, and looked at cities that are connected to water or waterfronts, how this informs the systems of the city, and bringing back that knowledge and that experience to look at what we can do at with the waterfront in Toronto. So examples of a first-year studio. So to pull it one more time together, seminar in critical practice, seminar in contemporary architectural theory, orbiting around the studio in critical practice, winter term as the core, thesis and design research, seminar in future practice, orbiting around the winter term studio, and then your electives, and then the thesis, research through design. Accredited program. Studios. So these are some examples of studio work that was projects that were done in one of the last Venice studios in 2018. Interventions and I would say after analysis and exploring how to maybe improve a certain situation or change a situation. In the studio and critical practice, students are required to research, identify, confront specific issues, and develop an architectural or design response from a critical perspective. So it opens up and should open up your mind and open up the topics around what that could be and what a response after doing research and after exploring maybe certain kind of different avenues and methods, how that might inform a new kind of response or answer to a certain contextual situation. So students are required to consider the role of the architect and practice from varieties of perspectives, including those of observer, critique, designer, explore the role of the architecture as potential agent of change. So, and again, through our program themes. And this means if we have 28 students in the studio, for example, now we have students working in teams, students working individually. We have about 17 totally different responses to the waterfront of Toronto. So it's challenging for instructors, but also for students. So this is one kind of example of the way the studio was structured. In phase one, it would be focused around research, can be ethnographic drawing or drawing data. This was from the Pale Blue Dot, where we wanted to let's say, motivate the students to draw their research more than writing about their research, what they were already doing in the seminars. So how do you actually draw research? How do you focus on that to visualize that? And phase three as a proposal, what do you come up with after here, putting those two in the pressure cooker, a maquette I'll show you in a second, and coming up with a proposal. So this was a situation in Venice. This is actually all around auditory kind of sensation. So how do you actually experience the space through what you listen as material quality, as what's bounced off the walls when you're walking around this little square here in Venice? And that was research that was done here in Toronto, and then I would say revisited when they were in Venice. This is a silicon model of the maquette they did. So after looking at that and trying to take a different perspective on the square they were focusing on, or on a certain kind of context in Venice, and this student decided to actually model that situation, looking at citizenship, time, and economy, and using this silicon form or the silicon molds to produce every time a different kind of mold and a different kind of visualization of that theme. This is another kind of maquette that was done by another student where trying to see that the wall, ceiling, and floor are actually something that is defined through its orientation and space, and to investigate this kind of, I would say, multi-layered meaning of how space is defined through borders or through limitations of built limitations. So this is a collection of all of the maquettes that were done, for example, for a pale blue dot. So each student taking a different kind of approach to that, to a major kind of theme coming out of research, to open your mind one more time, to take a different kind of view of it, to see how you can be informed from another point of view. This is the publication Pale Blue Dot. You can find it also online, and then you can take a look at what that studio produced. These are all the students that were in that. They've all graduated now a year ago. And you can also follow us and take a look at the current work that the studio is doing, and also what the courses, some of the course results are also posted on Instagram, TMU_ArtGrad. So this info session is also being recorded and will be updated on the site. So if you miss a slide or two, you can always go back and find our Instagram's address. The Winter Studio in collaborative practice, I'll give you a look into that. So architecture never is a product of a single individual. The myth of the star architect, of the heroic and creative genius, is out of step with the reality of architectural practice in our increasingly complex society. So working collaboratively in teams and with input from specialized consultants and stakeholder groups, students develop the design of a complex building, a design process that inquires into, analyzes, and integrates technical, cultural, social, and economic issues, which is stressed. So this studio is perhaps, or is developing, and always also is, I would say, slightly changing depending on who teaches it. But what just happened in the past years, it's always looking at architecture and the potential of what is existing and what is there. How can we work with it? Not only just recycle, refurbish, upgrade, but what is the potential that might be even hidden on many other dimensions in these existing buildings? So this was a studio that focused on the school buildings of the 60s in Toronto that were more or less are slowly disappearing, and trying to reinterpret, just tearing it down, but reinterpreting it as a piece of heritage or documenting history in Toronto and how to work with it. But there are also other solutions around architecture, let's say, other existing architectural situations in the city. It doesn't have to be necessarily a building, can also be a void. Again, this is a school project. Again, a different kind of school project, another kind of addition to already existing contexts. So those are examples for the studio. Now I'll go through examples for the thesis project. And so the thesis project gives students the opportunity to complete a significant body of independent design research on a topic of their own choosing under the supervision and guidance of a committee. So your supervisor, your main go-to person, then there's a second reader. You can bounce off certain ideas, get a second view. And then there's a program representative that makes sure everything is going okay and that you're meeting the standards of the program. So, so this kind of thesis is a single work of research engaged in a number of modalities: literature, scholarly, case study, analysis, design exploration, best suited to the topic at hand as determined by the student and the supervisor, and an investigation that serves as an appropriate vehicle for the exploration of the thesis topic. The relationship between various research modalities must be highly integrated so as to create a single coherent body of work. So regardless of how it's framed, students are required to demonstrate mastery of the various skills and abilities developed over the course of their studies and that are commonly used in professional practice. So this is where we rely on your whole education up till then, from the undergraduate through the graduate studios, and how this informs this thesis project. And it's very open, as you can see. It's you read it, and I'll show you also examples of this. But it's and it's challenging, can be stressful at times. Yes, it's intense, but it's it's very, I would even say, very beneficial. Not only looking at it as a developing a mastery in the profession, but also as a kind of character education, if you wish, for the profession. These are examples of theses. So it's Kevin Poo's Architecture as a Respiratory System from 2015. So I'm going way back here, but this is also another one, Anticipating Change for the Future of Architecture envelope. You can see that this is one that was parametric design from Antonio Cunha, looking at the parametric design and its steps and analyzing these steps, how it actually generates architecture, and being very critical about that. This should not be read as something that is as a great resolution, but as a part of the process in the thesis project. Material computation for a new equilibrium in architecture. You can see how experimental this is even. So these are already students that are invested in computerization, so how to actually program certain how forms are generated, or envelopes are generated, spaces are generated. Another one that's re-engaging the spirit, traditional Anishinaabeg healing beliefs on architecture, addiction, and well-being. So this is a building as a result, or a concept of a building as a result, that comes through very thoughtful research on this topic around well-being and addiction. And so how does that now translate into a building as a facility that accommodates and takes care of these issues? These are just these are renderings from that same kind of building. Gregor Tratnik, The Etymology of Craft. So these are, we have a series of students always interested also in material and craftsmanship, and how that can be maybe reinterpreted to promote a different kind of architecture other than what we probably casually default to. So these are engagements from Ryan Fernandez. Embedded responsiveness. This is actually an interesting thesis that was done in a group with other thesis students. It was a little research hub Marco Polo and I formed around wood architecture and new wood architecture in collaboration with the Bergen School of Architecture in Norway. And we were lucky to get a larger grant for this, and this promoted a very good workshops of each other visiting. We went over to Bergen in Norway, and the Bergen students and their instructors came to Toronto, and really had a very good discussions and discourse around new wood architecture. This is one example, and he was really looking at the hygroscopicity of wood and how wood relates to its environment. And then what he used there was a sauna to exemplify that. These are studies around his work. So another thesis, another one by Pritish, very different, giving you a insight into all these different kinds of theses. One looking at imagery, also have a lot to students looking at architecture and how it's represented, and how the representation actually informs us and maybe even changes our perspective on architecture and how we designed. This is another one that looks on the temporal quality of architecture. This exploded diagram is actually only a kind of summary of what the student was looking at. I forgot again what that word means, Auraric architecture. Well, you can look it up and you can find it. So Freedom Stone, there was a very interesting process that she went through. It's a very good. Sarah Lipset, Body Meets Space. So this was an investigation coming actually from very personal, very around her own body, how this relates to enveloping her own body and how it relates to space. And she came up with these designs and made it a one room exhibition in the gallery around this. Yekaterina Korotoyeva, Bodies in Architecture, another one finding how we interpret space, how we would maybe wish to be accommodated in certain spaces. Another interesting one. Yara Ragap, who is all of these students that I'm showing here, they've all won also awards, prestigious awards here in the department and outside of the department. This is very interesting. Yara Ragap from Syria, and she was looking on the cultural preservation. A lot of these these souks were destroyed or partially destroyed, and she visited. She has heritage, comes from that area, and visited this once more, and tried to document it as much as she could, and find a strategy to of preservation and of reconstruction, and to make the scars of the war legible, but at the same time to bring back the quality of the souks, or if possible, to improve the qualities. So you can find these all on our share. It's still called our share. And look up these theses. There are many there. So over the last 15 years, many have been collected. So there are over 300 theses that have been collected, and you can rummage through them at your own desire. We have exhibitions and awards. You know, awards night that happened last week was a very good reception. We see the posters for the thesis work that are hanging out there in our hallway and in our exhibition area. And also for thesis, milestone presentations are coming up. So after the first week of December, following 11th, 12th, and 13th of December, we will have milestone presentations for 24 different theses here over the 3 days. So it's milestone 2, so it's already asking for a thesis project, not a resolved thesis project, but an idea of what the thesis project, based on the subjective theory that's been developed, what that looks like. So it's a very interesting stage, of probably the most interesting milestone, to be honest. So now we come to Masters in Architecture, what you need to be admitted or to actually apply for admission. So we would like you to submit a portfolio, your official transcripts, as far as you have them by then, English language proficiency, statement of thesis intent, your resume or CV, and 2 letters of reference. If you are applying from the undergraduate at TMU most recently, you do not need the 2 letters of reference, so they are waived. Is anyone going abroad here on an exchange? So you will most likely have your transcripts a little delayed. That's no problem, so don't worry about that, right? As long as you can graduate, it'll be fine. Yeah, Mimi? Do you have to switch it on? You have to switch it on.
So for those that are in or going exchange, just make sure you let Cheryl know so that you can expedite your transcript.
Yeah. Let her know that you'll be applying for masters, but most of you do. Yes. Yep, same thing. But mostly those grades are in on time. If you're doing the spring summer studio, you're going to Barcelona, or yeah, it'll be the same. Just a little day. Sometimes for the, where are you going, to Norway or to Munich or to Delft? That even could take into August. So that's why. So don't worry, right? Well, we can make that work. other admissions requirements. So to be, what we'd like you to have before coming to our program is a completed Bachelor of Architectural Science degree, and then it says or equivalent. So this is something if you're coming from a different program, that we take a closer look at on a case by case actually situation. This depends on what your portfolio looks like, what your transcripts look like, what your reference letters look like. Or equivalent can mean that you have done definitely have done a comprehensive design in another program in your third year or fourth year, and we can take a closer look at that. That is mostly, I would say, the kind of point that's very interesting, is that you have actually done a comprehensive design in your program. So that's everyone listening online, not coming from TMU. Or equivalent can also mean, let's say you've been out in an office already for 5 years, have gained a lot of experience, have worked on many different kinds of levels in the office, not only design but also maybe design execution. You be sure and make sure you submit that with your parts of it in your portfolio, or make that clear. That will be also taken into account for your application. So a minimum grade point average, 3.0 in the last 2 years of study. That's what's wished. And the possession of the minimum requirements does not guarantee acceptance. Of course, we have about, as I said, 25 domestic slots and a maximum of 5 international. We can play with those numbers a little bit, but at the moment we're mostly framed around 30 students for our joint studio in the first year. The master program offers preparation for entry into the profession of architecture. So a student with an undergraduate degree in architectural science or its equivalent. You must hold an undergraduate pre-professional degree in architecture that is part of an accredited professional program, CACB or equivalent. College program and degrees that are not part of accredited architecture programs are normally considered insufficient preparation for admissions to the program. So be aware of that. So there are exceptions, but you have to make your case very clear to us. Now, then at the moment we have excluded that from the, if you're coming directly from that CIT program, you can apply. I still encourage you to apply. We take a look at all of our applicants domestically, and make a clear vote on that. Okay, so I wouldn't discourage you necessarily from applying. It's not enough information just to say that. That's what I'm just trying to explain now. So from other programs too, where let's say they're not necessarily a comprehensive design has been something that has been a focus of their program, still you should apply to our program. What we also take, sometimes we ask you to compensate for the students, applicants to compensate for certain things that we feel from a program perspective would be needed to be successful also in the master program when you continue, or to make up for that kind of professional accreditation. So that the offer can come with a condition. So that means you might be asked to take on another course that specifically focuses on something that is lacking still in your education. But that is done really on a case-by-case basis. Very few have those conditional offers. And even if you are asked to do that, that's not something on top of the program, but we substitute that for an elective, so that is more or less, it's a kind of exchange currency. I'm sure there are a lot of questions around that. You can also email us so we can give you a clear answer, but I would always encourage you to apply, so we can take a look at all of the documents together. So submitting the complete application package to the architecture program is a two-stage process. So you submit your application via Ontario University's the application center, OUAC. Probably all know that have at least applied in Ontario already. Prepare your documents to upload via Toronto Met's Yeats School of Graduate Studies. So you will, this is should be YSGPS. So don't be confused by the abbreviation. The online system is mandatory, and the Yeats School of Graduate Studies will not accept any hard copy application packages, nor will they be processed. So this is all now an online process. So don't send us anything. Then step 1, step 2, you select the programs you wish to apply to and click Save Program. Step 3, you create or log into your OUAC account. Ensure that you write down your username and password because you have to return to that application possibly and upload another document. Prepare your application using the navigation bar on the left to fill out all these things and make the payment of it's still $110, or is that not increased? Okay, to the program as requested. So, and then submit your application. And step 7, check your inbox, ensure the email address you provided has been uploaded. You get a confirmation, everything works out well. So these are the documents we'll be asking you for. So the statement of thesis intent, and that's what I mentioned, where you look at our 3 program themes. So it'd be nice if you can locate them into that. You don't have to. If you have something that is very different, it's fine too, right? Your resume, your CV, your letters of recommendation, if necessary, your transcripts, and for our international students, English language proficiency test. So we prefer ELTS, but if not available to you, then a TOEFL test also is sufficient. It would be nice that you show proficiency across all of the subject categories or competency categories, you know, and don't just overperform in writing, but are in the spoken language or in listening that is quite weak. We try to take a deeper look at these English proficiency tests to make sure that you have the qualification and your portfolio. So here you will find a detailed explanation on the website of what each of these rubrics entail. So I'm not going to walk through each individual one for you. I mentioned the thesis intent. The CV is just make sure that you also have that included in your portfolio and your letters of recommendations, academic and professional. It would be great if one is at least from an academic background. Transcripts, I mentioned that as well. You'll see what it means for previous Met students and for other students from Ontario's, and your language transcripts and the grading scales. So what Ina, for example, does, one of our administrators too, if you're applying from a different university or applying from an international university, those grades will all be translated as best as possible into the Toronto Metropolitan grade scale so that we can benchmark everyone the same way. So if you have been admitted into the Masters of Architecture program, have confirmed your offer, you will be required to submit official final transcripts in a sealed envelope. That comes after. So, and if you're taking spring summer courses, may be delayed, don't worry. And if you have withdrawn from a program since applying and accepting an offer, and the program did not serve the basis of admission, your official transcripts must indicate that you have withdrawn from the program. So that's a speciality you might want to look at all upon admittance. So the way the process works is, I'll talk about the portfolio, is that, I'll talk about that in a second. I'll get to that in a second. So the portfolio, there are clear description of what we're looking for in the portfolio and how to submit it. Not more than up to 30 pages, a 52-page spread. We can't look at 100-page portfolios. We have about 150 to 200 domestic applicants, and between 250 and 400 international applicants. So it's quite competitive. So please respect this outline, keep it clear, and keep it organized the way we ask you to do it. And what we would like to see in the portfolio is more interesting. It's of course what you've been working on, your work here as a student and the undergraduate, but also if you have additional work that let's say you worked in an office for 2 years. Some go into do their Bachelor of Architecture here, then go into an office for 1 or 2 years and then come back. So if you've done substantial work there, please include it also into your portfolio. And what we were looking for is a kind of course, kind of maturity around the subjects in architecture. Not only design things, also comprehensive design what you're doing typically here in 3rd year, that you can also have a certain understanding of design development, not only schematic design or conceptual design. And through your thesis statement then that accompanies this, or might already have been doing these things with these topics in your studios, a kind of critical approach. English language, I already mentioned that. Then you have to fill out this form that you made this portfolio, that it's all your work. It's not AI generated. Please make a portfolio that TMU will accept, and then it makes one. You can do that now. So you have to sign off, this is your original work, okay? And we have tools to find out if it's not. Portfolio is around 30%, your GPA around 25, statement of thesis around 25, CV 15. CV, we're looking for experience, how you engage with the profession, if you've been in a student association, and many things, and your references around 5%. So you see the weight is on the portfolio. Now, don't think we sit down and do necessarily just math with these things. Of course, we look at what is actually in front of us. And what we've also been doing in the last 2 years, we've been conducting personal interviews. So we filter candidates that we think are very interesting. Might be that we say the paper looks really good, or we see there's something there, we're not quite sure, that we would then invite you to an interview. If you've already convinced us, we might not invite you to an interview. So if you don't get invited to an interview, it doesn't mean we're not interested. It just means that we might not need that interview for further clarification. So last year we had almost about 40 personal interviews. I'm part of them, and a colleague is part of them. For example, Carlo Parenta, you might know, a professor here, was part of the interviews. Julia Jamrozic was part of the interviews. Mimi has been part of the interviews where we sit together. So we have at least 2 people there. We can do them on Zoom or in person. And there's about 15 minutes. We would schedule them and we would ask you to participate. And we can also accommodate if you're working in an office, or especially for those listening in, and you can't make it, we can also do them later in the afternoon or after 5. So this is how we try to gain a picture of a future student coming into the department. So again, why attend the Master Program of Architecture TMU? Critical thinking, small class sizes, personal supervision, unique theses, the making lab or the workshops, and the study tours. So that's my pitch for you. That's why you should come. So who's interested in coming? Or are you just sitting here for interest? Okay, good. So again, we are the people to go to, Mimi and myself. You can always catch me. For people in the building, it's easier. You know, I'm right around the corner here in the master studio, no problem. And if you have questions, or you can email either of us. Mimi will say a few things in a second. You have a question right now? You came a little later, correct? Yeah, so it's just a question around the 3 themes. Who remembered them? What's one? Sustainable design. emerging technologies, and global communities. Paid attention. Great. Thanks. Mimi, you would like to see a few things around admissions process?
Yes. Ina left me a few notes. I just want to make a correction. It's both the same email, gradarc at torontomu.ca. The MARC one is no longer
Yeah, scratch that one.
u-
Yeah.
in use. Okay, so the process is a two-step application process. So you first submit, similar to undergrad, you would first submit to your OUAC. And then it takes about 2 to 3 business days for them, once you complete that application process, for them to send you a link to the My Toronto link, a portal, and then you would activate your online ID. And then that's where you would submit your documents. So you can submit the documents as you go, but it's only when the application is completed that it would be sent to the program to be reviewed. So, and you can actually on your portal track to see which documents are still outstanding. If you are a Toronto MU student currently, I think Paul mentioned that, put in the references, grad reference at Toronto MU. You do not require a reference if you've studied in the last 5 years. So if you're past that, you may require
Mhm.
a reference. So English proficiency test is required from applicants who have completed the degree outside of Canada in a language other than English. If you completed or if the language was in English, you just have to have a memo from that university or the transcript should indicate that. And then the first consideration deadline is January 20th. But applications will continue to be reviewed until all spaces are filled. And in TMU applicants, you do not need to order a transcript, an official transcript. Once you graduate, it'll automatically be submitted. Let's see.
Maybe just
So-
fill in on the process a little bit. So the deadline to upload your application and all of the documents is January 30th, correct?
20th.
2020?
20th, first consideration.
Oh, first consideration. So we normally wait a week or so after that, so don't be worried about that. But then we start. So then Ina, who was not here today, she will collect all of the applications and work on them to submit to Mimi and myself. What we then do, we organize a portfolio review committee, and we have all of the colleagues teaching in the graduate program, and also some who are teaching in the undergraduate program. They build committee teams, and they look at your portfolio for sure, and your CV, and your letter that you have written, and we'll evaluate those because we want to do it relatively quickly. So from that, we generate situation kind of clear offers. And then we have a situation where I just explained we need maybe like to have an interview to clarify something. After that, we make another round of offers. And we see how that then, I would say, moves forward. So even if you don't immediately get an offer by, let's say, March or mid-March, it doesn't mean you're not going to be considered for the program. What happens is, you do throw in multiple applications at many different universities. So we have to also wait, and other universities are not necessarily that quick. So we have students waiting for maybe a university where they'd rather go to than coming here again, or a lot of TMU students that want to continue somewhere else, but not here in the department, and who have received an offer, but then they withdraw. And so there's a lot of movement that still happens. There can be 5, 6, 7 students suddenly withdrawing, which allows us then to put out another set of offers. So sometimes you have to be a little patient, show a little patience in the whole game. So just a word on finances, or were you going to talk about that?
No, I just wanted to mention about the GPA because there was also a question
Okay.
posted online.
Yeah.
That the GPA calculated is using your last 2 years or your CGPA, whichever is higher.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're applying from a different institution will be using the grading scale of the institution that you attended.
Mm-hmm.
So at TMU, it's going to be about a 3.0.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Yeah, it's just maybe a word on the finances so you understand. Um, we we are in the situation of able to still give scholarships associated with our offers. So the program has around 170, $180,000 Canadian that we can distribute among year 1 and year 2. So divide that by 2, 80 to $90,000 is scholarship money that can be distributed to in offers to students. And they are tagged differently from 10,000 to 5,000 and 4,000, whatever. We try to make sure that if possible, all students get some kind of scholarship money to buffer the expenses coming towards them, because we know that. We would like, I'm constantly arguing for more scholarship money because it has not changed in the last 15 years or something. So it's the same amount. So, so that's one way that money can come your way. Another way that money can come your way is through graduate assistance positions. Now, what TMU is not allowed to do compared with other universities, we are not allowed to mix future money that you will earn as a graduate assistant into the offer money. We can't do that. So you get so that sometimes looks better at other institutions because they've mixed in a graduate position. So if I mix in 100 hours graduate position for $45 an hour, I can suddenly beef up your scholarship by $4,500, right? So what we do is we commit to a graduate assistant position for most of the Master of Architecture students in first year. That's what we do. So if you are interested in getting a position, you will most likely get one. And they are tiered from 60 to 90 to 120 hours. Another source of income is research assistantships. We have colleagues here who are very successful in getting grants and research grants. So they need research assistants. So a research assistant pays slightly less, around $25 an hour, but is also a very interesting position to create a relationship with possibly with a supervisor, or to gain more insight into what research means in architecture. So that is another way of, I would say, creating a better financial situation for yourself. Yeah, those are the things we do. And as I said, for the travel to Venice, you can also expect a kind of buffer. So this year, students received $700 each towards traveling to Europe, so, which is good. Pays almost for the flight ticket if you're lucky to get a good flight ticket. So yeah, it's better than nothing. So that's what we can do for you. And most of the program money is that I'm allowed to budget always goes towards the students. So I would say 75% of that money we make sure is somehow associated with whatever the students are doing in the department. Yeah. Do you have another thing? Questions?
there's some questions. When is the deadline for international students application?
I would probably say end of January. I wouldn't go beyond end of January. You should then belong to the first kind of, let's say, first kind of round of recommendations for offers, because if you get an offer and you need a visa, you need about 3 months to get one. So we know that, we are aware of that. So we try to speed up the international applications as quickly as possible.
Do you recommend students to have co-op experience or work experience at a firm for a better acceptance or understanding in masters?
It's always helpful to have experience. It also depends on what kind of experience, right? So, but definitely experience goes towards your maturity. So it's great if you have it, even if it's a little, even if you've worked only once in an office, maybe over the summer, that's great. So any kind of experience you can bring in, and a variety of experiences. So it's not just only limited to architectural offices. You could bring in that experience of working on the winter stations, or here with Vince with the digital tools, or you have people are working on for NGO organizations that are building things over the summer. Those are great experiences and welcomed as well. So they're not just limited to co-op, that co-op students have automatically are pushed through and get an offer. I wouldn't say so. It really depends on what kind.
How is the program compared to U of T?
Program compared to U of T, totally different. So the program at U of T is different in itself. It's basically the U of T is a 3-year program. They allow students coming from different career paths into their Master of Architecture, and that's why they need 3 years to make up um, for competencies that have not been acquired in their undergraduate. They have then other competencies that they can bring into their program, but they do not have, there are certain specific architectural competencies that are lacking. That's why they have a 3-year program. TMU students that tend to go to U of T normally get an advancement in academic standing. That means they get pushed through. They automatically go into the 2nd year, and they can jump the 1st year. I don't know if they still do that because they're also losing money, but normally that's the way it works. The master's studios, or the master's final master's projects there, are more designed as a studio. They're not a thesis. So there are 6, 7, 8 students that are gather around a supervisor for a specific topic. How much they are directed into their own kind of personal approach to architecture, that probably depends on each instructor, but it functions more like a design studio than it does like a thesis project. So similar to something, comparing it to TMU, it's similar to the 4th year, the way we design the 4th year in architecture. Yeah, those are major differences. I don't know, don't even know the price tag for U of T. I'd have to look it up. So could be slightly more expensive as well.
So there was a question about, is there an option to defer? And I just said it depends. It's a case by case determination of,
Yeah.
this was the first year that we allowed deferrals.
We now and then have a deferral for international students if they've been offered, they've been allowed to come in, and they can't make it on time to get a visa. So it can happen that, a week later they get the visa, but it's too late to actually come in to the program. So then we give a deferral. If there are students that come through the process, get domestically, they get an offer and they'd like to secure that position, we have normally not opted to do that because it is a competitive process. So if you've been successful the first time, you most likely will be successful the second time around, but you'll have to reapply.
And then does the university allow us to take semester gaps?
Depending on what for.
So I just also mentioned that the courses are only offered in a specific term. So if you haven't completed your courses,
Yeah.
you'd have to go back to that
Yeah.
term to complete it.
Gaps,
And
yeah.
you pay per semester that you're enrolled.
Yeah, exactly. So gaps have happened mostly in the thesis project stage, where a student, maybe it can be family situations, something where they are needed, or if they're an international student, have to go back home and would like to come back, they can pause. They can pause and do not have to pay the fees, and then would come back to the program and finish. Yeah. Anything else in the room, maybe? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. You upload that. You upload that to the portal. I mean, what's missing is, and we know it's the 4th year is missing, right? Right, right. 4th year fall term will be included. The winter term will not be included. For those that are going on an exchange, it's only a pass-fail basis, so please pass everything. That's easier. So and we will operate with that GPA that you have on your transcript, right? So we look a little back too. I mean, we're not, we're not fixated on just looking at that. I mean, it's also happened too if someone has a strong portfolio, great references, and it's a 2.9 or whatever, we won't say no if it's a great application. Then we will still make an offer, right? So we're not super strict on just looking at it. As you could see, it's a kind of holistic look at the application. And that's what it's increasingly called, holistic application process, so that we don't, like some programs, engineering programs, just purely look at the grade, you're in or you're out, right? No, that's just for the portfolio. If 15 spreads or 30 individual pages for your work that you're showing. Yeah, yeah, don't have to count the CV and your, yeah, don't have to do that. Yes. Yeah, I would. I would add it as a separate CV, and but also include that CV page in the portfolio. I think the description also says to include your CV in the portfolio.
Yeah, you
that
have to, because otherwise it won't be considered completed.
yeah, you have to. Yeah, that's why you have to upload it. But for the reviewing process, it's you open up, you have all the files, and the colleagues sitting there, 3 or 4 colleagues, they open it up, can take a look at right away, look at your CV, and then page over to your, some even include the letter, the letter as well in that, or their thesis statement also into that. So that works as well, right? So yeah, have it also in one document. Well,
If you have A minus average in your last 2 years of completed study, you would be automatically considered for the OGS. So Ontario Graduate Scholarship, which is $15,000,
right,
but divided by term. So
by
like,
3 terms.
so basically $5,000 per term.
Yeah.
But so it's interesting because you would be applying and you wouldn't know your 4th year marks yet. And we wouldn't know as well. So it'd be your 3rd year and your 2nd year. So for those that took co-op, if you took one course, even if it's an elective, like Chang School Geography, for example, that one course will count for your whole year course. So if you got an A in that,
Yeah.
that's an A
Yeah.
average.
I always encourage those students who are confident they are competitive for those scholarships that they apply, because they go through a ranking. So we get them all those applicants for so that's another source that's not included in the scholarship money I mentioned. This is extra scholarship money. We get to rank those applicants because it's a university-wide Ontario graduate scholarships. Then there's also the Toronto Metropolitan Graduate Scholarships, which is also 15,000 or 12,000.
Yeah, it gets all pulled in together.
Yeah.
It's like a TMGS, but like, yeah, and then gets distributed.
And the Queen Elizabeth too. There's
The
also,
only
it's also
exception is
15,000.
international students. If you apply to that, it's a smaller, it's less scholarships for the OGS, and you are ranked in comparison to the
Yeah.
entire university, all the international applicants.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
would year
Yeah.
before, yeah.
for that. I mean, those scholarships are highly competitive. So, I mean, we do have, I mean, last time we had even 2 students getting an OGS, 1 TMGS, and 1 Queen Elizabeth. So 4 of our students from the whole program. So if we have 40 students, 10% got a higher rank scholarship. If you get that scholarship money, then the other scholarship, or should you get secure a scholarship, the other scholarship money from the offer letter is then redistributed. So let's say I gave you $6,000 in your offer letter, suddenly you get a 15,000 OGS, you don't get both, you get either or.
That's another reason to apply before the first consideration deadline, because it's usually the earlier group of people that apply that get considered for the OGS. Because if you apply after the deadline, we may miss out, on your application. So, yeah. Yeah. It's very confusing process because I have to do the calculations for marks. For master's consideration for OGS, we take your last 2-year completed study. So your fall terms marks won't count. It'll be your 3rd year or your 2nd year. And if you took co-op, it would be that year, Then we would take that one class. And you need to have an A- average in both years to be considered for that. If you're a PhD applicant, we take all of your graduates programs.
Yeah.
So it's your entire graduate's career. Yeah. 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 But when you apply the following year, we would take your 4th year. So if you, in your 2nd year of study, you would apply again, presumably, and we would consider your 4th year marks for your as a completed study.
We have 2 more questions, yes?
Sorry, if you didn't take any courses during your co-op term, then it would be your 2nd and 3rd, I guess, because you still took your 3rd year study, right? Yeah.
And you had a question?
Exactly.
Yeah, yep. Yeah.
Yep.
But as I say, also the GPA is just one. For the OGS, it's one criteria. It's not the only criteria, right?
But it's a minimum eligibility.
Yeah, it's a minimum. Yeah. And no,
Just for OGS.
just the
Yeah,
OGS.
yeah.
We're just talking about OGS scholarships now. You can upload them. Yes, there's just no requirement for them, right?
Which
So,
also reminds me, if you're applying for OGS, we will need references.
Yeah.
But if you're internally and you have an A-, reach out to me and I can send you the forms to
mm,
get your referees to submit.
mm. It goes step by step, so you don't have to worry you missed something. If we filter you and when Mimi does that, sees, oh, this is an OGS option. We're going to make an offer. You accepted right away, and you are eligible. You will get an email, and you'll be told how to prepare for that. Okay, so don't worry. It's not, and there's no missed information. That's you get more information than you want actually. Yes.
Yeah. Minimum of 2.
It's a
It's a minimum of 2.
minimum of 2.
At least one of them should be academic.
Mm. Yep. Academic?
For
It
OGS,
can
it
be,
should be
can be, yeah.
academic, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Of course,
For
people,
OGS, it would be better if it's academic.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. You can have two from the department. That's no problem. They don't have to be from outside. Oh.
Any other?
Okay.
Oh, one more.
Uh, hmm?
On the website for YSGPS, it
Yes.
says for international to be December 1st.
Yes. Well, yes, but are you an international student? But you're studying here, right? Yeah, so you're doing your fourth year here or your third year, or what are you doing?
He
Yes.
still has to submit a study permit. So let
Yeah.
us know when you submit your
Yeah.
application ASAP. Send me an email the moment you've completed.
We monitor, so this is the way, yes, 1st December is great. If you can do it the earlier the better. We monitor the international students, but we will look at it all together because I mentioned it's a competitive process. So we won't just look at 4 students who have submitted by Christmas. We will look at all of the applicants. So we make sure that it's latest in by January 20th. Okay? Yes.
Sorry, what would you like to resubmit?
Yeah, I would just wait.
Your portfolio?
Yeah. Well, you have to bear in mind when it's on the website for YSGPS, it's not just for the architecture program. It's for all graduate programs that operate differently. And not all of them have a holistic applications process like we have. That's why I'm saying do not worry. Make sure it's in by January 20th. Okay, that's early enough. You don't have to submit and then resubmit and resubmit. Don't stress yourself there. Make sure it's in by the 20th. Okay. Any more questions online or in the room? Thanks very much for coming. And if you have questions, really, just approach us anytime. Okay.